The scene started at the construction point of the road, and Tomo was working there. A man called out to Tomo and said that it was his last day, so he could leave for that day. And he didn't have to worry because they would pay him the total of his wage for the day. Tomo thanked that man. A worker said that there were lots of luxury vehicles passing through that day. Another one replied that he heard Q Academy was starting a new term that day. The first one said that it was the academy for the high-class ladies. Tomo thanked them and bowed in front of them, saying he would take his leave. They told him to take care, and then Tomo left. One worker mentioned that although Tomo didn't talk much, he was a good kid and worked from morning until dusk. Another one said that he heard Tomo was doing a part-time job at another place as well and wondered why Tomo was working like that. Another one replied that it was because Tomo's family was extremely poor. Tomo, walking home, felt happy thinking that from the next day, he would be able to go to school and believed that his savings would be enough to pay for the school fee. Knowing that he would be able to proceed to the second year felt like a dream. He then arrived home and, calling his parents, informed them that he was going to prepare the food and also get the money from his part-time job. He asked if it was alright to use the leftovers to make a feast that day. He was aware that it was afternoon, and he bet they played mahjong until late again. Seeing a letter, he read it and found it written to be well. He wondered and said that there was no way his parents would run away. He started searching but really didn't find them. He thought that his parents might have taken all the money, but they also didn't leave any rice. He then went to his neighbor, excusing himself, and the man told him that he saw Tomo's parents in a hurry to leave in the middle of the night. Tomo wondered if they were so poor that his parents had to leave in the middle of the night. Learning all that, he felt very disappointed. He checked his money and found only 200 yen with himself. Walking on the roadside, he pondered if they were poor because his parents liked gambling. He considered how he could somehow survive the day with the money he earned from his part-time work and wondered what he should do from the next day. Could he imagine living alone in that house and still be able to go to school? As he walked, he saw two schoolgirls passing by and heard them talking about Q Academy starting the new year that day. One of them said to Hinato to take care of herself, and then she left. Tomo thought that it was a school exclusively for children of big conglomerates or big political figures. The academy had extremely strict admissions standards, beautiful buildings, and its students came from high-class lifestyles. Tomo thought that their works were too different from his and it wasn't any fun. Then he noticed an ID card, which belonged to a Clue Academy student. He wondered if it belonged to those girls. He approached Hina, telling her that she dropped her student ID. However, he saw a car stopping nearby, and people from the car, with masks covering their faces, quickly got out to kidnap her and put her in the car. Tomo wondered what was going on and asked them what they were doing. One kidnapper said it wasn't his business, while another asked if Tomo knew the girl. They couldn't leave any witnesses, so they insisted that Tomo come with them as well. They pulled him into the car and they drove away. They took them to a house and instructed them not to move, as they were caught by handcuffs. Tomo mentioned that he didn't think his parents were going to pay them any money. They replied that he was the extra one. Tomo pondered if his parents ran away from home, and after that, he gets kidnapped. Was it some kind of karma for what he did in his past life or something else? One kidnapper mentioned that the girl was from the Hina family, worth over 300 trillion yen, and was the most prominent donor of Q Academy. The other one added that they might get quite a lot of money from her. Tomo thought that she was a lady from Q Academy, and he bet that was what they call love at first sight. He considered her a real high-class lady, wondering about her body and thinking that she behaved gracefully with refined expressions. Honestly, it wouldn't be strange if they used her for something else other than money. Just then, Hina mentioned needing to use the toilet. Tomo thought there was no way she could behave normally in such a situation. Even a rich lady was still human, and it was normal for her to do that from time to time. Hina said that she was going to leak and Tomo was worried about what she meant. He thought she couldn't understand the situation. A kidnapper told her that if she was going to leak, she could go ahead and do that there, as it was too much of a pain to watch over her for any suspicious moves. She asked if he was sure, and Tomo said it wasn't okay, urging her to hold it back for his sake too. The kidnapper mentioned they didn't know how long they would be holding them there, and it would be troublesome if the place got dirty. He also stated that he wouldn't take off the handcuffs. Hina went to freshen up, and after that, she came back, saying that it was relieving. Tomo thought he didn't want any report from her. They all returned to their places, and Tomo wondered what was with that girl. She was so different from what he expected. She then ordered tea, leaving Tomo shocked that it didn't even faze her. The kidnapper decided to give Hina water, but she replied that she was asking for tea. One kidnapper told Tomo to take care of her. Tomo questioned why, and then he realized she was drenched, so he asked for the reason. She took the bottle in her hand and said that she was not used to drinking from a pet bottle. One kidnapper remarked that it was bad, and the girl was indeed from the Kakohana house. The other one mentioned that she had said that herself too. Tomo wondered if all high-class ladies were like that, bold and unfazed. He offered his help to her, but she replied that he wouldn't take that from him. Frustrated, he said he wouldn't, and it was such a pain. Then he suggested they move a bit because it was forming a puddle there. He saw that she put her head down. The kidnappers discussed if they had heard from people that the ladies of the Konohana house were perfect. The other one said he didn't think that the girl was someone from that house. The data indicated that it wasn't wrong, and even his parents were not that troublesome. Tomo then asked her if she could stand up. He excused himself and, by moving her hair from her eyes, told her not to be alarmed as it was only a scratch. He advised her not to touch it because it might get infected. She agreed and then asked why he was there. He explained that he was only trying to return her student ID card, which he dropped when the kidnappers came. She questioned him about her student ID card, and he handed it to her. She pressed a button on it and mentioned that with that, the rescue should come soon. Then, she expressed a desire to sleep. Tomo asked how she could go to sleep, and she inquired about a pillow. She then tried to adjust his leg to make it a pillow. Tomo thought that such a refined girl acting so spoiled towards him felt like it would give him a heart attack. However, remembering what happened before, he managed to endure it, wondering if the kidnappers told him to take care of her. Just as Hina put her head on his leg, she mentioned that it was the right height as her pillow. Then, she slept there, asking him to sing a lullaby. He apologized and replied that it was not in his repertoire. Hina suggested that he should at least tell her an interesting story. He thought that nothing could really stop her, and he wondered how she could sleep so soundly in such a situation, even drooling. He thought that a normal girl would cry in such situations, but Hina blew away the dark mood in that situation, and thanks to that, he was able to keep calm. Just as she woke up, he apologized if he had disturbed her. She replied that it was fine. Suddenly, a container fell, making a loud sound. One kidnapper on the call mentioned that if the other one kept delaying like that, he would give Hina a good punching, so they should stop trying to provoke them like that. Tomi said to Hina not to worry, and if things got worse, he would try his hardest to protect her. Hina asked the reason why he would do that. He thought that for someone who had a bleak future, he might be able to save someone. He asked why she would ask. He continued thinking that even if that was nothing but for his own self-satisfaction, he had the feelings that it was one thing he still could do. The reason why he thought so was thanks to Hina. He then replied that he didn't have any idea. Hina considered him a good boy, and it felt nice to have him around, like the smell of a freshly hung futon. Tomo thought, does she mean she likes the smell of dead ticks? Hina told him that she had a lot of servants, but they were all so strict. He was the one who treated her calmly and allowed her to act casually too, and she was happy with that. She inquired about his name. He replied that he was Tomo. She said that she was Hina. Then, she touched his face and said that from that day, he was going to be hers. Before she could finish her words, the rescue team arrived to save them, and all the forces charged the kidnappers. They said that they secured the two suspects and asked when they got there. They suggested to the kidnappers not to fight back. Those people captured Tomo as well, and he stated that he was a victim there. A man informed a lady named Shiz that they had secured 3 people. Shiz mentioned that the criminals should only be 2, and she wondered if the information was wrong. Tomo wondered if she was a maid. Shiz asked Hina if she was fine. Shiz apologized to Hina that they couldn't come in time but just let them know when she went outside. Hina replied that it was too troublesome. Shiz said that something like that would happen if he didn't. Hina pointed to Tomo and said that he wasn't any criminal. Shiz apologized because they initially thought he was one of the kidnappers. Tomo explained that his hands were also locked, so there was no way he was one of them. Shiz said that there was a chance he was actually on that side, and after all, anything could happen when there were lots of criminals. Tomo replied that it might be true. Shiz suggested leaving the rest to them, and they should head back. Hina told Tomo that he was coming with them too, and then she told Shiz that she wanted him. Shiz agreed and said that they would take care of the rest of the things. Then, they all got into the car and headed away from there. Hina told Tomo to wake her up when they arrived, and saying that, she took support from his shoulder and slept there. Tomo then put the seatbelt on her and himself as well. Shiz commented that it was no wonder that Hina was interested in him. Tomo asked what she was talking about. She replied that he would soon understand and that they had already checked Tomo's background. He was 16 years old, studying at Ryui High School, had no siblings, lived with his parents, and his family was so poor that he paid his tuition fee with his own money. Last night, his parents had left him in the middle of the night, taking all the money with them and leaving him in a very dangerous situation. Tomo asked how she knew that. Shiz replied, "Don't underestimate the Kakohana network." And then she added that she understood he wanted to start his second year from the next day, but he wouldn't be able to attend that school any longer. Also, he hadn't paid his tuition fees. He was shocked to hear that. Shiz said that she bet his parents had been planning to run away from home at that time, and since they also ran away with his part-time money that should have been used to pay for his tuition fee, not to mention that he had bills and rent fees too. She was sure he wouldn't be able to live in that house any longer. He thought he didn't expect his parents to be that heartless. Shiz said that she had suggestions for him, so could he work for Hina? Tomo replied that he didn't have any idea about what she was talking about. Shiz said to just let her explain one by one. He agreed, and then she asked if he had heard about Konohana Group. He replied with a yes. She said that he would know that because his bank account was in the Konohana Bank after all. He thought for her to stop opening his private things. Shiz continued that Konohana Group was a Zaibatsu enterprise that runs city banks and large general trading companies. Their total worth was around 300 trillion yen, and their influence was not limited to Japan but also in different countries. The girl who was sleeping next to Tomo was the daughter of the president of Konohana Group, Hina. He thought that she was the most powerful lady in that country. Shiz said that her offer was for him to work in the same job as Shiz. He asked if she was willing for him to become the maid. She denied and said that she was talking about being a butler, but strictly he would have to work more than a butler, and under normal circumstances, he couldn't perform that job without receiving proper training first. But they were making an exception, and it seemed that Hina had taken quite a liking to him. Hina hugged him, and he wondered if she was only half asleep. Then he smelled her, and that was good. Shiz said that if he attempted anything debauched with Hina, she would chop him, and they would discuss the specifics with his employer. Finally, they arrived at the Konohana villa. Tomo was shocked to see such a huge villa, and a lot of servants formed a queue to welcome Hina there. Tomo was very surprised and thought that if he compared it to his house, it seemed like a dog house, but more like the toilet cabinet. Then they entered the villa, and he was just looking around. Shiz asked what reaction he was giving. He replied that it was because they lived in very different worlds, and that gave him goosebumps. Shiz said that if he started working for Hina, he would go through that scenery daily. Tomo thought that he still hadn't decided whether he would work or not, but he had pretty much lost all his confidence. Shiz wondered about Hina's plan for the whole day. She replied that she would sleep. Shiz said that she understood, so she would be showing Tomo around, and someone would remain with Hina in Shiz's stead. Hina said that in reality, she wouldn't sleep. Shiz asked if she wasn't going to sleep. Hina replied that she would stay with Tomo. Others started rushing because Tomo postponed her program. Tomo thought about the ruckus and how she had been sleeping the whole trip, so she was feeling awake. Shiz agreed and told them both to just follow her. Hina grabbed the shirt of Tomo, and with that, she climbed the stairs. He asked if she could make it up there or if she wanted him to give his other hand too. She replied that she was fine. Other servants were only looking at them. And then they got to the room of Hina's father, and the man said that the boy who was with Hina was Toko. Then the man introduced himself as Kajin, the father of Hina, and also the president of the Konohana Group. Even though he said that he was president, he was actually just in charge of one of the group's companies, so he was not that big of a deal. Shiz replied that the next head of that group sure liked to jest. Kajin laughed and said to Shiz that she did not have to say such, and that it was only a joke. And then they asked Tomo if he would feel timid if the atmosphere was too stiff. After some time, Kajin noticed that Hina started liking him, just as Tomo noticed that she started sleeping again while standing. Shiz went outside of the room, and Kajin asked Tomo if anything happened during Hina's kidnapping attempt because he hadn't seen Hina get so attached to someone she met for the first time. Tomo wiped the water which was coming out of Hina's mouth and said that he hadn't done anything. Kajin said that he understands Tomo lives by intuition, so he was sure Tomo just had the suitable chemistry. And besides, Hina had always wanted a caretaker who would treat her without fear or restraint. But because of Kajin's position, he was unable to find someone like that for her, so she probably doesn't want to let Tomo go, whom she luckily met. Tomo thinks that Hina already told him that she had a lot of servants but they were all so strict. And if that's the case, it makes sense. Kajin said that before he explains the job as the caretaker of her, he would like to tell Tomo more about Hina. He just called Shiz. Shiz showed the screen and said that it was what Hina looked like in the academy. Tomo understood that it was of the Q Academy, and from the looks of that, both the building and the facilities were very good. And there, Hina was walking, and all the students greeted her. During class time, the teacher told Hina to just solve the questions. Hina got on the board and did that. All the students, along with the teacher, clapped for her and appreciated her. After the class, some students came to her and said that they were having a tea party in the Rose Garden, so would she consider joining them too? Hina agreed as long as they were fine with her. They all thanked her, and one said that she had prepared some delicious scones for Hina. Hina replied that there was no need to go that far for her. Tomo was reminded that a lot of people were calling only Hina. He questioned what that was about. He understood that it was Hina, and by saying that, his whole body was shaking, thinking, what a load of bull. Kajin said that Hina could pretend to be a perfect lady in front of others. Tomo questioned that. Kajin talked about the incident when she wasn't in front of other people. In the vacant time at school, a girl said to Hina that they needed to get ready for the next class. Hina replied that she felt tired and wanted to sleep. The girl suggested that Hina hurry up because she had the gym class, so she should get ready. Hina raised her hands and asked the girl to put that on for her. They both got to the ground, and the girl received a call, saying that they had detected unauthorized use of Hina's credit card from the Konohana family. Hina was lying there and said that she dropped her card 3 months ago. The girl was shocked and asked her why she didn't tell her about that. Kajin said that it was the real habit of Hina. The previous lady with Hina was the last caretaker, and she suffered a gastrointestinal perforation due to stress. She sent a letter of resignation after getting hospitalized. And to sum that up, Hina could act like an absolutely perfect lady in front of others, but otherwise, she just indulges in hedonism. The fluctuation between her on and off stages was vigorous, so she required someone who could properly manage both stages, and that was a request from Hina herself. Kajin would be doing Tomo a favor if he became the caretaker of Hina. Tomo replied that he knew it was not the polite thing to say, but at that time, he was penniless, so could he get paid for that work? Kajin thought about that and then decided that Tomo had to live there, and they would provide him with 20,000 yen and 3 meals a day. Tomo wondered about living there for 20 grand days, and the salary was several times higher than his previous work. Kajin asked if that was too little, so he offered 50,000 yen. Tomo was shocked to hear 50,000, and Kajin asked him how much he wanted. Tomo replied that he normally got around 8,000 yen in his past job. Kajin told him that the responsibility of a caretaker was much higher than Tomo was expecting. And did he know why Hina had to keep that perfect lady image? That was because she needed to find the ultimate husband, and the Konohana group had been achieving very little as of late. That wasn't enough to start internal strife or outside competition. But he couldn't afford to ignore that any longer, and whenever she involves with other people in parties or school, she has been keeping the perfect act since a young age. But he couldn't be able to change her real personality. So, as a caretaker, he needs to preserve Hina's appearance as a perfect lady and do all things from the shadow to prevent Hina's real nature from coming out. As a result, Kajin wants Tomo to understand that it is to protect the Hina family brand. Then he asks what salary Tomo wants. After some time, Tomo came to his room and sat there, thinking that at last, they decided on a 20,000 salary. But that was when Kajin questioned Tomo's resolve. He remembers that Kajin said that the initial price was whatever, but he was expecting Tomo to work hard to do his job. Just as Hina falls onto Tomo, he gives her support by saying that it was so close, and then he grabs her cheeks, thinking that she won't stop drooling. Kajin said to him that if he lays his hand on Hina, so just Tomo, and was Kajin going to fire him? Kajin grinned and said that he would never do that. Instead, he would kill Tomo. Reminded of that, Tomo fell out of his bed and thought that it was scary, like a perfect bride or an executioner, and he hadn't even thought about any of that before. He looked outside the window and thought that it was a really different world from his. Just then, Shiz came to his room, asking if he liked his servant room, and she also congratulated him on getting the job. She expressed that she was happy he got that job and hoped to keep working with him in the future. He thanked her for that. Shiz said that she still hadn't introduced herself yet and then mentioned that she was Shiz, the maid of Hina. She intended on guiding him in his several duties as a caretaker, so let them make acquaintance. She then gave him a dress to change into. He wore that and remembered that it was the Q Academy uniform. Shiz asked if the size was perfect. He replied that it was perfect and asked if he really was going to attend Q Academy. Shiz agreed and mentioned that the last caretaker suddenly quit her job, so they had to ask Tomo to join the school for her sake. Tomo said that the school was very famous, and he didn't think that anyone would befriend someone like him, considering he was kinder than poverty as he thought about it. Shiz asked him if he was nervous. He replied that he was. She then made sure he properly wore the dress and said that it was why she was Tomo's maid, so he should mind his appearance. And firstly, she would hand him his resume. She provided him with papers and mentioned that by the rules of the school, servants couldn't enter Q Academy. That's why he was an affiliate of the Konohana group and not part of the main branch, of course, but he was a successor to a branch company. And then the plan was for him to become a businessman, but he was just a normal person used to living as a commoner in their books, and his family was a sort of the Konohana group. But that's why he must serve Hina in that way, so no one will be suspicious if anything happened, and he was questioned. Tomo thinks that it was right and that it would be hard to discover his role that way. Shiz said that she had one more matter to discuss, and then she put some huge books in his hands, saying that it was the caretaker manual. It felt so heavy. Shiz said that she wanted to gradually trust him with that role, but if anything was confusing to him, he should use the manual or ask himself. There were all his tuition, his textbooks, and reference manuals. She then added some more books and mentioned that Q Academy was a prestigious school filled with wealthy women, all belonging to high classes. So, a commoner would have a hard time keeping up with them when suddenly thrust into the field. So, he would be taking supplementary lessons until dinner time for every class he would attend. And he would always have to walk alongside Hina at all times, maintaining a grade level befitting her. He thought that he was studying hard to raise the possibility of attending college. Shiz said that it wouldn't be just academics, he needed to learn both manners, etiquette, and also attend self-defense classes. He questioned the self-defense classes. Shiz asked him if he was afraid. He thought that they were testing him. He replied that he had experienced the worst physical labor had to offer, so he was quite confident in his stamina. He thought that if he was going to keep working there, he couldn't afford to be overpowered. Shiz then said that once Tomo finished the basics and lessons of caretaking, she hoped to expect many things from him and advised him not to underestimate the low-budget student. In the self-defense classes, she attacked him and made him fall to the floor. He knelt in front of her and asked for forgiveness. Shiz mentioned that the lessons for that day were finished, and she appreciated his work. He thanked her, thinking that she was twisting his hand like a baby's hand, and she was the combat maid. He then went to his room, fell on his bed, and thought that the day was very horrible, wondering if he could really last in that place. But that was the first day, so he couldn't afford to whine about it. Just as he found Hina sleeping on his bed, covering herself, he got shocked to see her there and questioned why she was there. He remembered Shiz's words that he had to change his way of talking to Hina because he was her caretaker. He asked politely why she was there and mentioned that the bed was for the caretaker. She replied that it was her bed. Tomo thought that this was what the manual was for, and he mentioned the things to watch for when Hina was sleeping and when she was in the mansion. It said that she almost slept, and if they woke her up midway through, she would find herself in a bad mood, so always make sure to let her sleep after taking her to her room. He wandered in his room and wondered if it was too late, and what he should do. Just then, he received a notification from Yuri asking if they could go to school. He realized that he forgot to tell Yuri and wondered how he could explain that. Yuri typed that if he didn't reply, she had other friends to go with and told him not to ignore her messages. He texted her that he was in a situation, so he couldn't make it to school anymore. She called him, but he didn't answer, so she asked for the reason. He replied to talk another time. Just then, Hina came behind him and called him. He was surprised to see that she was awake. She questioned who the girl was. He replied that she was his childhood friend who attends his current school. Hina covered herself in the blanket and said that it was confiscated to maintain the peace. He asked her to give it back, but she denied, saying that she hated his tone, so he should make it normal. Tomo hesitated and mentioned that Shiz told him to change that. Hina insisted he should just make it normal, so he complied. He asked if that was better, and she agreed with him. He wondered why she was going so far. She called him and suggested they have a good day the next day, then she went to sleep there. He agreed with her and asked if he could at least take her to her room, but he saw that she was already lying there. The next morning, Shiz called Tomo and told him to come to that location and inquire about which seat he wanted. He replied that he preferred the rear on the right side. She agreed and mentioned that in the case of being driven by a chauffeur, the seating arrangement goes from the rear's left, center, right, and the person with the lowest position sits at the chauffeur's side. Tomo said that if the driver was a companion, the person with the highest position sits in front instead. Shiz said that it seemed like he had studied well. He thanked her. Then, Shiz said to Hina that it was time to depart. They sat in the car, and other servants told Hina to take care of that. The car left from there, and Hina felt so sleepy, so she decided to head home. Shiz said that she would do that after 8 hours because the setup was that the two of them lived in different houses, and she would be dropping him off somewhere close to the academy's gate. Tomo asked if it would be just the two of them. Shiz reassured him not to fret and mentioned that there would always be one of their people close to them. She explained that the incident from the last day happened because Hina left without permission. As her aide, Shiz requested Tomo to prevent such a situation from happening again. Tomo agreed, and then he noticed that Hina was staring at him. Hina questioned what was with his talk and asked Shiz to allow Tomo to talk to her casually. Shiz replied that it might set a bad example for others, but she eventually agreed, saying that it would be fine when it was just the two of them, and also when Shiz was present. Hina agreed and then asked if it wasn't nice that Tomo was allowed to talk to her casually. Tomo replied that he wasn't exactly thrilled. Shiz told Tomo that she asked him to speak properly inside the school grounds, as doing so would help him avoid needless friction, given his standing in the academy. He agreed with her. Then, Hina laughed and said that they were almost there, so she ordered Tomo to carry her. Tomo was shocked and said that he was afraid it was beyond his limits. Hina asked if they knew that Tomo smelled nice. Shiz wondered about that and then asked if she could take his smell for future reference. He humbly refused. They arrived at their destination, and Tomo came outside, noting that it didn't seem like there was anyone nearby except for the bodyguards of the Konohana family who must be watching from somewhere hidden. Shiz called Tomo and handed something to him, suggesting he make use of it if Hina became unreasonable. She asked him to take care. Tomo and Hina took their bags, and Hina expressed her desire to go back home. Tomo asked if she didn't have to keep up her act. She replied that no one was around them, so he could relax. He thought that it seemed like Hina had a function to detect people's gaze installed in her, and as for him, he had to protect her image as an esteemed young lady. He then saw Ku Academy, realizing it was huge, and despite thinking the name was kind of stupid, it was still a super excellent educational institution. Some students greeted Hina, and she greeted them back before heading away. A boy commented that she was so beautiful as always, and a girl mentioned that Hina was so elegant. Tomo thought that her posture and demeanor were totally different from just a few seconds ago. They really couldn't tell that she was the same person who fell asleep in his room with a puddle of drool last night. Hina looked at him and asked if there was any matter, urging him to let's go. He agreed, and they kept moving, with other students looking at them. They both reached the staff room, where a teacher, Fuku, said that they both might be Hina and Tomo and that she had been expecting them. She introduced herself, explaining that she was in charge of their class, and suggested that they get along well. They replied that they would be in her care. Fuku asked Tomo if he was an acquaintance of Hina. Hina replied that her family and Tomo's family were very good friends, and because of the close relationship between their families, she had been designated to introduce and show him around the campus. Fuku remarked to Tomo that he was very lucky to have Hina as his guide, and perhaps she could have her turn next. Tomo thought that Hina might get lost in the school if left to herself. Fuku mentioned that it was already time for class, so they should go. They entered the class, and Fuku introduced the new student. Tomo introduced himself and expressed pleasure in meeting everyone. Fuku instructed him to go and have a seat. As he went, he noticed there was no applause or bows from the other students. They seemed mature, and their gazes and expressions were welcoming. Fuku suggested they start with mathematics, acknowledging that they were curious about the new student, but emphasizing the need to focus on studying first. She announced that on that day, they would be learning about integration by substitution. Tomo was in shock, thinking that it was something he learned at the end of the third year, but it seemed like they were covering it in the spring of their second year. After some time, the bell rang, and Fuku stated that it marked the end of the period, reminding them to review what they had studied that day. Tomo thought that he managed to keep up, thanks to Shiz, but found it challenging, and he wondered how Hina was doing. A girl approached Hina, saying she had something to ask about what they just learned. Hina agreed, and the girl continued the conversation. Tomo thought that it seemed like Hina was doing well. However, a boy called out to Tomo, expressing that it was pretty cocky of him not to say hello despite being a newcomer, and demanding his tributes. Tomo was in shock. A girl came to pat the boy on the head and said, "Don't scare the new boy there." Then, the boy apologized to Tomo and explained that it was just a joke. He introduced himself as Katsu, and the girl, Karen, mentioned that she was Karen. Katsu remarked that Tomo seemed desperate to keep up with the class. Tomo asked if he had been watched, to which Katsu patted Tomo on the back and reassured him not to worry because half of the transfer students had gone through the same thing. Karen commented to Tomo that he was now living the commoner life. He agreed and expressed his curiosity about commoners. Karen mentioned that she had never heard the name Tomo before and asked about his family's occupation. He replied that they were in business and not particularly a big company. Katsu confirmed that he knew that. Karen explained that the new students who came there were split into two patterns, either students with high academic abilities transferring in for higher prestige or students admitted due to family circumstances, and a lot of students of the former pattern were from well-off families, while the latter were mostly born as commoners. Katsu added that the circumstances of that school were very challenging to keep up with if they suddenly transferred from a normal school. That's why students from the same background grouped up and supported each other. Both Katsu and Karen were commoner-born students, and Tomo could rely on them. Tomo thought that they were there to show him the ropes as fellow commoner students, as expected from Q Academy students. For a wage of 20,000 yen per hour, along with 3 meals and lodging, Tomo was happy and expressed his gratitude, telling them to just take care of him. Katsu mentioned that there was something he would like to inquire first in a formal tone. It wasn't a big deal, but he asked about Tomo's relationship with Hina, mentioning that they came to school together that morning. Tomo felt like he was up in the gallows for a moment there. He then replied that because their parents had close relations, she offered to show him the way to the academy. Katsu asked if that was real and if he was not Hina's fiancé. Tomo replied that it was not at all. Katsu became happy and told him not to surprise him like that. Karen commented that it was a very tense moment. Tomo asked why he asked. Karen replied that Hina was very famous in that academy, and yet there was no incident about her romantic relationships. People thought maybe she already had a fiancé, and when she came to school with Tomo that day, they assumed he was supposed to be Hina's fiancé. Tomo thought that he hadn't heard about whether Hina had a fiancé or not, but since they were still in the phase of looking for a family for her to marry into, he believed she shouldn't have won yet. Katsu said that there was still the possibility, though, and as for him, he didn't have a fiancé yet, so don't hesitate to introduce him to someone cute if Tomo knew anyone. Tomo replied that he would see what he could do. He was worried about how things would go, but it was unexpectedly going pretty well. Then he arrived at the old student council building and thought that he heard it used to be the student council's office, but was not used anymore because it was old. He entered and wondered about lunch. Both of them were going to the cafeteria. Heading upstairs, he felt sorry that he had to contact his family at lunchtime. He had also brought a packed lunch for that day and wondered if Hina had done the same. There were rumors that she was actually helping with the family business and participating in meetings via call, which was what he would expect from Hina. Entering a room, he found Hina there, so he greeted her. She replied to just speak normally. After that, they went to the balcony and sat there. Hina picked some food with chopsticks, and Tomo commented that it was falling from her chopsticks. She then passed the chopsticks to him. He told her not to pass that on to him, but then he realized that she wanted his help, and that was the reason she needed a caretaker. He took that and started feeding her, thinking that it couldn't be helped, and he remembered that he couldn't drink from a pet bottle as well. She took it and said that it was so good. Tomo questioned her if she always had her lunch there, and he mentioned that he heard they also had a cafeteria. Hina replied that she didn't like gathering the attention of people, so, as he could see, the place they were in was empty, and with a bento, she could only eat what she liked. Tomo was surprised to hear that she also brought the food she didn't like. She replied that she hated carrots, bell peppers, green peas, shiitake, umeboshi, tomatoes, and pumpkin. Tomo responded that it was a lot, and he bet that she didn't like vegetables. She smiled and said that he got it. He started feeding her again, thinking that Katsu and Karen would be surprised to know about Hina's food preferences. Hina asked him how the academy was. He replied that, as expected of a famous academy, it was difficult to even follow the speed of the classes. Then he cleared the food which came on her face. Hina appreciated him doing his best, mentioning that if he had bad marks, he might be removed from the caretaker position, and that would be bad. She then saw his lunch and asked him to eat too. He agreed, and as he opened his lunch, he realized it was a bento, and wondered if it was fine for him to eat that. Taking a bite, he said that it was so good, and all the fillings in it were so fresh. Hina asked which one he liked the most. He replied that they all tasted great, but if he had to pick one, it would be the egg roll that he tried for the first time. Hina said that he could have that, and she was returning the favor, so just open his mouth. He thought that she was not blushing at all, so he should not let that bother him. He then took the food, and she asked if it was good. He replied that it was, and he asked if she was okay giving him that. She replied that she was his master, so she needed to make sure to feed him, and if he didn't like her, that would be a problem. Tomo asked why her previous caretakers quit when there were other caretakers for her. Taking a bite, she replied that she had no idea. The last one stayed only for 2 weeks, and the one before that was for 3 weeks, with the longest one being about 1 month. He questioned why they stayed for such a short time, and he didn't think there were any better offers than that job. She wondered about the offer. Tomo replied that he got paid 20,000 yen per day and also received 3 meals per day. Though it wasn't an easy job, he considered it a pretty good one. Although it wasn't easy to attend classes, he would also receive education with that job, so it wasn't bad at all. Hina then asked about herself. She asked if he was interested in marrying a rich girl. He was shocked to hear that and hesitated to say something. Hina told him not to quit, and eventually she started sleeping there. Tomo asked her if she wanted a pillow. She just came to his foot to take rest and slept there. She commented that it was comfortable. He thanked her for the compliment and thought that from another point of view it might be a very exciting situation. But it just didn't feel right. Although he was formally her caretaker, in reality their relationship was a bit weirder than that, and it didn't feel bad. He received a call from Shiz, and upon picking up, he said hello. She replied that he picked up the call late, so from the next time, be sure to pick that before the 5th ring. Tomo replied that it was pretty weirdly tolerant. Shiz replied that it was because she needed to consider that he was in school, and until he got used to his position as the caretaker, she would regularly check on him like that. She asked if he was in the middle of a break and if Hina was on his side. He agreed and said that Hina was sleeping at that time. Shiz asked if anything was bothering him. He replied that not really, and if he had to say one thing, the level of that academy was pretty high. Shiz said that if that's the case, she would add more supplementary classes for him. He replied that he shouldn't have said that. Shiz said that honest people grow fast. Tomo mentioned that he heard from Hina that the longest caretaker of hers stayed there for more than a month. Shiz replied that it was true, and all of Hina's caretakers up until then were originally someone working for Hina's father. And being Kajin's subordinate meant that they were Hina's subordinates as well, and because of that, they couldn't help but act as her servants, which Hina did not find to her liking at all. Tomo asked if Hina didn't like servants that much. Shiz replied that rather than servants, Hina doesn't like a too tense atmosphere. It was the first time they had one commoner as all the caretakers of Hina. When they were in the middle of looking for another caretaker, Hina recommended him. That's why they took him in as an experiment. Tomo thinks that it explains how they took care of the administration stuff that fast. Shiz asked if he had anyone close to him in school. He replied that he was getting along pretty well with Katsu and Karen. Shiz wondered about that and mentioned that Karen comes from a family that owns a small trading company focusing on electronic appliances, and its name was G's Holdings. He replied that he didn't know about that, and they said that they were closer to commoners too. Shiz asked if that was so, and she believed that G's Fenjo was pretty famous, though. Tomo wondered about G's Denki and thought that he had seen its advertisement on TV a lot. As a matter of fact, he bought some of their products as well. He asked Shiz if that wasn't a very famous corporation. Shiz replied that indeed, their revenue was among the top 5 electronic appliances retailers in the country. Tomo wondered if part of that was from the commoner side. Shiz told about Katsu that he was from the famous moving company Teishu. Tomo thought that Katsu was also from a famous company. Shiz said to just report to her when he got along with other people and to tell her if he found any trouble. He thought that he felt betrayed. Just as Hina woke up, she asked him what was wrong. He thought that she woke up, and his confidence just took a huge blow. He thought that all the students there were from rich families, and at that rate, they might eventually discover where he came from, causing trouble for the Konohana family. He asked her why she chose him to be her caretaker. She thought about that and answered that it was because she thought he was an honest person. She liked the part where he took care of her simply because he wanted to. He wondered about what she said, and if she was still half sleeping. Just then, the bell rang, and Hina said that she wanted to skip the afternoon classes. Tomo denied that. In the class, the teacher asked Katsu to solve a question. He replied that he didn't know that. The teacher then asked Hina for that. Hina went and then solved that question. Tomo thought that he couldn't believe that she was the one who had been rolling around, refusing to go to class a while ago. After some time, the bell rang, and the period finished there. Katsu said that he was beaten. Karen replied that he couldn't answer that question earlier. Katsu said that he just missed that one in his preparation. Tomo thought that he still needed preparation to go to class in Q Academy. He then said that he would go to the restroom. He then found Hina was going too. Just as Shiz called Tomo and asked if he was free at that time, she thought that Hina had dropped her wallet. Tomo wondered about that. Shiz explained that there was a tracking device in Hina's wallet, but the position of her wallet and Hina was getting in a different position, and she was sure that it was on the west side of the main building, but it was difficult to pinpoint. And did he have any idea? Tomo thought and said that it might be in the restroom. Shiz said that she had been alone in the toilet and people often drop things there, so just go and collect that wallet. Tomo got surprised to hear that a boy had to go in the girls' washroom, and he got very confused there. Just then, Mayuri came there and asked him if he was alright. He questioned who she was. She replied that she hadn't introduced herself, and then she said that she was Mayuri and she was the lone daughter of the teacher of Tenouji Group. Tomo replied in a simple way. She seemed surprised to see that and asked why did he give an answer like a dumb person. He apologized to her. Mayuri said that there was no way Tomo didn't know about Tenouji Group, or did he really not know? And she was a part of Tenouji Group. Tomo replied, admitting his ignorance. She responded that it was far from being ignorant, and Tenouji Group was a conglomerate group that managed all the mining of iron ore. They held the title of Japan's greatest non-ferrous manufacturers and also the biggest chemical products. They both were on the same scale as the Konohana Group. He gave the reason that he knew the Konohana Group. He replied that he knew and he couldn't stand that. Mayuri got angry at Hina because, due to Hina, Mayuri was still unknown to all, and then she asked him what his issue was. He replied that it seemed like someone dropped their wallet in the girls' washroom. Mayuri said that she would bring that for him, and then she gave the wallet to him. He thanked her, but then Mayuri asked him how, as a man, he found out that someone had dropped their wallet in the girls' washroom. Tomo thought that it seemed like Mayuri was an enemy of Hina, and if he said that it was Hina's wallet, there might be some trouble. He might have to trick Mayuri, so he said that the owner of the wallet told him to look for it, and by a process of elimination, he figured that it was in the toilet. Mayuri said that he was a gopher and inexcusable. She knew that everyone in the academy had a bright future ahead of them, and if Tomo let people take advantage of him, he was going to lose his battles ahead. Tomo replied that he would be careful. She said that she didn't feel like he was confident in that. He shouted that he would be careful. Mayuri said that he could do that if he wanted, so just fix his posture, and his confidence was totally dependent on his posture. He maintained that, and she appreciated it. As he headed away from there, Mayuri told him that if he had any issues in the future, just look for her golden locks. He asked her if dyeing his hair was against the school rules. She stopped there and asked if it was wrong for her to do that and if he was saying that her golden hair was nothing but a facade. He replied that he didn't mean that. By running away from there, she clarified that she didn't dye her hair. Then the time came for the school to be over for that day, and others were leaving. Katsu appreciated Tomo for his work. Karen mentioned that Tomi wanted to have a first day party after that. Upon hearing that, Tomi apologized and said that he was told to get back home as soon as possible. Katsu said that first days always go that way. Karen offered another time, and they were free all the time. Tomo said that maybe he could ask next time when he had the chance, and he wanted to explore more about their school by himself. They both agreed and said, let's meet next day, and then they left. Tomo saw that Hina was also leaving the class. Tomo thought that he needed to see Hina off, so he went to see that Hina bought bread from the school store, and then she got into her car and left. Tomo got there and while walking, he thought that no one was there, so what was she doing there? He saw that she was sitting beside a pond and was feeding fishes. He asked what she was doing. She replied that she was fish feeding. Tomo said that he knew and that was nice. He thought that she had both the soul to enjoy arts and the innocence to love animals. Hina said that she guessed the fishes get food by opening their mouths, and she wanted to be like them as well. Tomo thought about how innocence like that was and that it seemed more like envious spite. He sat next to her and said that fish also experience pain that humans never understood, and maybe they should go home because Shiz was waiting for them. Hina simply denied that and mentioned that she had lots of lessons to do at home after school, and since not many people were around, it was more free. Tomo thought that it made sense, considering many students were busy with studying and work, and he heard that the school had no clubs too. He tried to convince her by saying they couldn't live in the school forever, so let's go. Hina just lay there. Tomo replied that if she kept lazing around, she was only going to experience more pain. Hina still refused to go back home. Tomo looked at a packet and remembered that Shiz told him to use it when Hina didn't listen to him. He questioned what that was. The packet made a sound, and Hina realized it was chips. She started asking him to give that to her. He replied that if she agreed to go back home, then he would give her that. She replied that she couldn't resist her temptation. Tomo thought that he had never seen someone bend over backward like that over chips. She then got the chips and the car came to them. Shiz apologized to Tomo for keeping him waiting there. He thanked her and said that it went all according to plan. By sitting in the car, he thought that they could go separate ways in front of the gate, and then meet at the car. By doing that, no one would guess that he and Hina were going to the same home. She has said that Hina was spilling so much. Hina replied that it was just like the crumbs and slurping of noodles, and spilling crumbs was how to eat chips. Tomo wondered about that. She has told him that it seemed that the thing she gave in the morning was working, and that was Hina's favorite snack. She couldn't eat that without it, so that worked well. Tomo asked how she couldn't eat a lot if it was just chips. Shiz replied that it was simple. The unhealthy meal was not fitting for a lady of the Konohana group. Tomo said that he thought potato chips were personally fine. Shiz told him that it was beyond his understanding. Tomo thought that being in a wealthy family meant they weren't free to eat whatever they wanted, and that was worse than being a commoner. Hina said that she was a fish, so give her food. Tomo took the chips and started feeding her with them. Shiz looked at that and warned them not to disclose that in front of Kajin. Tomo agreed with that. At the house, Shiz told O that studying came first, so let's prepare for the class of the next day. Tomo agreed and sat there. Shiz said that the next was manners practice, and that what he was doing was wrong. Putting the knife and fork at 6 o'clock was England's manner, and for France, they should put the knife at 3 o'clock. And the review was over, so next was a self-protection lesson, and on that day, they learned jujutsu. So, do 100 rolls for warm-up. He started doing that, and after that, she said that it seemed like his body was quite trained because of his experience in his part-time job, and they would have a spar that day. He ran towards her, but she just moved aside and said that his movements wind-up was so easy to predict. She then made him fall and said that his attack wouldn't work on someone who used to fight like a kidnapper. Tomo asked if they could have a break. She denied that, and he was shocked to see that. After hours, Shiz said that the lesson ended there. Tomo panned and thanked her, and he just lay there. Shiz said that Tomo was a quick learner and he might be able to shine if he focused on honing his combat skills. She then moved her hand to ask if he was able to stand. He took her support, asking if that was real. She replied that he was bad at learning manners. He then apologized to her for that. Shiz suggested to him that wandering around with sweat like that wasn't good, so he must go take a bath. He agreed, and Shiz gave him a file, saying that he would have to check that. In it, there was a profile of all the classmates of Hina. He took that and thought that he had to study even while taking a bath, but his salary was 20,000 daily, so he had to do that. Tomo mentioned that he thought about it, and she was in a different class, but he had talked with a girl named Mayuri. Shiz asked why Mayuri talked to him. He agreed and asked if there was anything wrong. Shiz replied that it was not particularly problematic, and he might not have known, but Mayuri and Aju were often rumored to have a bad relationship in school, so that was rather a delicate matter. Shiz didn't know what Mayuri thought about that rumor, but Aju didn't really feel like that. However, it was also a fact that Konohana and Tennoji grounds were similar in size, and because of that, there were times they had conflicts, resulting in a kind of tense air between them from time to time. After that, Tomo came to the corridor by walking and thought that their relationship was simply complicated. Just then, Hina called to him. He asked what was wrong, and she replied that he reeked of sweat. He agreed, and then Hina asked where he was going. He replied that he was planning to get to his room for taking a bath. She wondered about the bath and, by holding his hand, said to just follow her. Tomo asked where they were going, and she replied that they were going to her room. They entered, and Tomo commented that it was so spacious, thinking that the room was shouting Aju. He commented that his room couldn't even compare to that room. Just then, Hina opened a door there and said that it was the bath. Tomo was surprised to see a very giant swimming pool there. He questioned why she brought him there. She replied, "Let's have the bath together." Tomo froze upon hearing that. She then changed her clothes to take a bath, and they both entered the pool. Tomo thought that maybe she felt lonely taking a bath alone. Hina said that it felt so good. Tomo felt embarrassed and thought that if he were frank, he told himself not to be conscious about that. But Hina was really a beautiful and charming girl. He then opened the file of information about those students to study. Hina inquired about what that was, and he replied that it was the profile of the classmates. After a while, he thought that he already knew Karen and Katsu, but all the students there were from big companies or chief politicians. He then asked Hina if she had anyone close to her in class. She denied that. He was surprised to hear that, so he asked if a lot of people flocked around her in the class. She replied that they weren't her friends. Tomo thought that it was a very fast reply and guessed that Hina was treated specially, either for better or worse. Many people talked to her, but they were not her friends, rather it felt more like they were her followers. He asked Hina if she never felt like having a friend. She thought and replied that it was fine as long as Tomo was with her. He thanked her and thought that he would just think of it as she had placed very high trust in him. Hina stood there, turning around, and told him to just wash her hair. Tomo told her to wash her hair by herself. She replied that Shiz usually did that for her, and as a caretaker, it was his job to take care of her hair as well. He replied that he didn't have any other choice. He started washing her hair and asked if there was any itchy place. She denied that. Tomo thought that her hair was delicate and different from boys' hair. He wondered if it was okay to continue washing it like that. Hina started taking her remaining clothes off because it was hot. He told her not to do that there. She replied that it was hot outside and strange to wear a swimsuit in a bath. Tomo closed his eyes, turned around, and said that it was very strange for a boy and a girl to be inside the same bathroom together. Hina told him that she wore a swimsuit in the bath because of shiz and that if he waited for a while, he could even see them bathing together. Tomo was shocked to hear that. Hina said that it was ticklish and her bad. Then Tomo washed her hair and said that it was done. She thanked him and asked if they could make it a daily routine. She told him to wash her hair every night. He was shocked to hear that. She then came out of the bath, and some maids came to cover her. Shiz came to appreciate Tomo. He asked from when she was watching them. She replied that she had been watching from the start and had prepared for his changes in the dressing rooms. She also gave him some medicine, saying that it was a pill that utilizes the side effects of antidepressants and anticonvulsants to make him artificially efficient. To put it simply, it would make him unable to stand anymore. He was shocked to hear that. Shiz said that if he thought he would come up with indecent thoughts about her in the future, he should drink that pill beforehand. He thought that if he drank something like that, he would become a maid. The scene shifts to a day when sections A and B of the second year were having badminton. Someone suggested that they would have the girls on the eastern courts and the boys on the western courts. Katsu asked Tomo what was wrong, and Tomo replied that it was nothing. Katsu commented that he was rather muscular, and Tomo replied that was so, as he occasionally trained. He thought that if he were honest, it was all thanks to his part-time jobs. The gym was quite huge, and Katsu mentioned that it was more than 3,000 square meters after all. Tomo was shocked, thinking that it wasn't that big as an event hall. The coach instructed everyone to do some free training after they finished warming up and then continue with their individual matches. Tomo thought that it was his first PE class at Q Academy, and he had to get himself fired up. They all started to warm up, and Katsu mentioned that Tomo was quite flexible. As they warmed up by playing, Tomo thought that it seemed he could keep up with everyone if it was just one-on-one, and it was more normal than he thought. Katsu suggested taking a break until it was their turn to have a match. Karen came over, greeted Tomo, and said that she was watching him, mentioning that he wasn't bad at all. He replied that maybe he was very confident when it comes to sports and could see that she seemed pretty good herself. She questioned if he had noticed that he was actually pretty comfortable with sports. Katsu added that Karen was also good at skating. Karen said that she was confident with her balance, and if she was not mistaken, Katsu was a good golfer. Katsu mentioned that he often accompanied his father ever since he was small. Tomo asked if the academy also taught skating and golf. Katsu confirmed and added that the second-year students also did polo, an equestrian ball game where they get on a horse and hit the ball with a stick. Tomo thought that he was too naive and realized that he couldn't afford to skip Shiz's lessons. Karen commented that it seemed like it was getting spicy over on that court because that's the game of Hina. Hina played very well, and other players said that it was as expected from Hina. Hina thanked that player. Others said that Hina was not only good at studying but she was also good at sports too. And for girls like them, Hina was an inspiration. Tomo thought that he had heard about the talent of Hina, but she was really good at everything. Karen said that still, even that came to PE, Hina was not the only one. And then Mia became the winner of the match. One said that Mia was also a strong athlete, and Tomo wondered if she was famous. Karen said that didn't Tomo know that, and that girl was Mia. Although she wasn't as famous as Hina, she was quite popular in the academy, and Karen thought that Mia was better than Hina when it came to sports. And the greatest cool beauty of the academy, but her most prominent characteristic was that a boy called Mia that she was really great at sports. Mia gave them an anger reaction. They got scared and, by apologizing, they ran away. Tomo was also in shock about Mia like that. Karen said that let's just say that Mia was a scary person. She doesn't speak much, and her face always looks tense. And there were all kinds of rumors about her, like she was in a gang or that she was from a Yakuza family or something like that. But that was just hearsay, though. Either way, it feels like there was a wall between her and other people. Karen did muster the courage to speak with her a few times, but Mia always said that she had something to do and ran off. Katsu then said that it seems like it was their turn, so let's get there. Tomo agreed with him, and Karen replied that she should head back to her group too. After the badminton classes, they all came outside and said that it was very tiring. Tomo saw that a boy asked Hina to have a match with him next time, and Hina also agreed with him. Tomo thinks that it seems Hina being popular was a good thing, And besides, during their lunch break, she was always surrounded by people, so he guessed there was no need for him to be worried. Katsu asked him what's wrong with him. Tomo apologized and said that it seems like he left his shoes back in the changing room. So then he went to the boys' changing room and found his shoes there. He got to put that in his bag and thought about Mias, and Kajin did say that to him. He remembered that Leijin told him when they met Yanni. He had investigated about the family of Tomo, and there was Lady Mia of the Miyakojima at that academy. Although there should be no reason to clash with her, just be safe and don't make any unnecessary contact with her. Tomo took his shoes off by bending outward. He thought that he didn't have much time for his next class. As he came outside, he collided with Mia. Mia asked if he was all right. He apologized to her and told her that it was Mia, then he turned to head away by excusing himself. She asked him if he was Tomo. He stopped there and denied that. She approached him, saying that she knew he was Tomo, and there was no mistake in that. She hugged him, and as she fell on him, she got emotional and said that she missed him a lot. Tomo thought of the time of a very long time ago, and there he was under the care of the Miyakojima family.